Shout out to Riakporhe, Julius, you legend. We're going to do a joint interview, yeah? Yeah, we'll do a joint interview, Julius. Thanks for the support. You're a legend. From your girls, Raven and Ellie.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from International Boxing News. We have been informed that Richard Riakporhe will not be fighting former WBO cruiserweight champion of Poland, Krzysztof Glowacki. Team Glowacki have had no contract from Boxer as of yet and have received an offer to fight Dylan Briggione for the vacant European title. Who should be next for Richard Riakporhe? That's the question. Unbeaten, hard-punching Richard Riakporhe of the United Kingdom, who is, more or less,
He's ready.
at the stage of his career where he needs to be fighting familiar faces, gatekeepers, and perhaps some former champions, if former champions are available. The Glowacki fight made a lot of sense to me, and it was a fight that
I think Richard could have won that fight. First clean punch that lands, he knocks out Glowacki. That's how I felt about that fight. Sporting a professional record of 15 wins, no losses, no draws, with 11 knockouts, having last been in action earlier this year in June against Fabio Turchi, who he stopped off a peach of a body shot, a well-placed shot that folded that guy up like a lawn chair. Richard Riakporhe, he hits hard.
Big guy for cruiserweight, strong guy at cruiserweight. I think the power, I think it's real.
He saw action 2 times last year, and he's already seen action 2 times this year.
And there's still enough time left in this year that they can get him another fight, get him a keep busy fight, because he's 32 years old. He's not the youngest guy around. Certainly not the oldest, but far from the youngest, not at 32. So if they can get this guy another fight before this year is out, they should.
He's got a respectable resume. He's got a TKO win over Tommy McCarthy.
Split decision win over CBS, Chris Billum-Smith, hard-punching Chris Billum-Smith.
Those are very good names at domestic level. I think Richard Riakporhe is now ready for world level.
He's ready for some world-level gatekeepers and journeymen, ready for some former champions. The Glowacki fight made sense. It's a pity they didn't get that over the line, that Krzysztof may decide to go in a different direction. He wasn't sent a contract.
That's the story.
Elsewhere in the cruiserweight division, the story seems to be the Democratic Republic of the Congo's WBC champion, Lunga Makabu, is set to defend his WBC cruiserweight title against Canada's own Ryan Rozicki. Rozicki notably lost a close points decision to Oscar Rivas up there at Bridgerweight for the inaugural WBC Bridgerweight title. Showed a lot of virtues in that fight, a lot of qualities, a cast iron chin, and a lot of gamesmanship.
This fight between them is supposed to be going down in Kinshasa,
Lunga Makabu's neck of the woods in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, October 21st, before this year is out. So needless to say, the champion will have home field advantage, and Ryan Rozicki will be the away fighter, as it were.
Sporting a professional record of 15 wins, 1 loss with no draws, 14 knockouts, having never been stopped.
You have to remember that Oscar Rivas, the former Olympian, he used to campaign as a heavyweight. And that's essentially saying that Ryan Rozicki, to some degree, showed that he can take a heavyweight's power, a heavyweight's punch, as that was no finesse fight between them. That was a brawl.
I understand that Oscar Rivas isn't the most physically imposing heavyweight.
He's not the biggest, but he has campaigned up there. And Ryan Rozicki was able to take his power for 12 rounds. He was able to take his punch.
More than that, he was really holding his own in there. He really made Oscar work for it. It was a great fight.
Showed a great chin, great gamesmanship. He has since rebounded off that loss earlier this year. In March, he knocked out German Montez.
Subsequently returned to action in May against Yamil Peralta.
Won a dubious split decision. Didn't look good in that fight.
The fight wasn't picked up by any major broadcasters here in the United States, so I didn't get to see that one, but I'm going to have to give it a look ahead of this Lunga Makabu fight. Lunga Makabu, the reigning champion, Lunga Makabu, the hard-punching southpaw, who will have home field advantage ahead of this thing. And like I said, because Ryan Rozicki showed a granite chin in the Rivas fight,
that's encouraging ahead of a fight against another hard puncher in Lunga Makabu.
Lunga, who earlier this year was said to be in the running for a Canelo Alvarez fight, but I think they've all but scrapped that idea. Haven't heard a peep about it.
Not in a while, I haven't. Lunga is the far more experienced fighter ahead of this fight with Ryan Rozicki, sporting a professional record of 29 wins, 2 losses, no draws with 25 knockouts, having been knocked out 2 times. That's basically saying that Lunga Makabu has quite literally knocked out more men than Ryan Rozicki has fought so far. He's a hard puncher. He's a southpaw. He's 34 years old, several years older than Ryan Rozicki, who is the younger, fresher fighter ahead of this fight.
Ryan's 7 years younger than Lunga.
And both boys have seen action within the last 12 months. Ryan Rozicki has fought 2 times already this year. Lunga Makabu. Lunga fought earlier this year in January against his old buddy, Thabiso Muchunu.
You want a dubious split decision in a fight that he didn't look good in, if we're being honest.
So Lunga has seen action in the last 12 months. He doesn't necessarily have any ring rust or cobwebs he needs to shake off, though overall, he hasn't been very active the last couple of years. That's the only fight he's had this year, and he sat out all of last year. So that's essentially saying that this guy has fought once, just once, in the last 2 years, whereas Ryan Rozicki, comparatively, has been a little bit more active.
A little bit more active? He's been 4 times as active in the last 2 years. He fought 2 times last year.
And 2 times this year. That kind of schedule, being busier than the other guy, in manageable situations, makes for a sharp fighter. The more you do something, the better you are at it. That's what they say.
Sharper.
It's a genuinely intriguing fight because I feel like both boys can hurt each other. They both pack big punches, big power. Experience is on Lunga Makabu's side easily.
Though punch resistance might not be, Lunga has been stopped at least 2 times in his career. Once, very long ago in 2008, and more recently in 2016 by Tony Bellew.
So maybe Ryan Rozicki has the better punch resistance of the two, the better chin. We can't say we haven't seen Ryan in there with a big puncher. We have. We saw him in there with Oscar Rivas.
And he took hard shots in that fight, weathered hard shots in that fight, landed hard shots in that fight.
Him being the away fighter in this situation has got to be the swift kick in the ass he needs to realize he's got to make it emphatic. He's got to go to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and he's got to stop this guy. He can't afford to let it go to the cards. You know that Lunga Makabu is a Don King fighter after all.
Based on both boys' characteristics as fighters, you get the sense that this one might not go the distance. Somebody might get knocked out. It's just a question of who.
There's no danger of Ryan Rozicki turning this into a boxing match. That's for goddamn sure, because that's not what he is. He's a brawler. He's a mid-range to inside puncher, mid-range to inside hooker.
Kind of guy that's going to put you in a situation to where either you've got to knock him out or he's going to knock you out.
Lunga's no Pernell Whitaker. He's a bit of a puncher himself.
It's important to note that this is a voluntary title defense, not a mandatory. Lunga doesn't have to fight this guy.
He wants to, and I want to watch it. Look for this late next month in October. In men's lightweight news, on the eve of his ring return, Vasyl Machenko says he's eager for Devin Haney showdown. I need this fight. Undisputed. This is more or less what Vasyl Lomachenko has been working towards ever since he stepped into the spotlight. I pray every day for Ukraine to stop the war, said Lomachenko recently during an interview with Top Rank. It's very bad. As the former 3-division belt holder attempts to restart his career, he does so with added motivation. Since wrapping 2 Olympic gold medals around his neck, Lomachenko has long expressed an insatiable thirst to become undisputed champion. Should things go according to plan, October 29th, Lomachenko could find himself on the verge of achieving just that. Having declined Kambosos' offer, Devin Haney happily stood in. And we know what happened. We know. Devin thoroughly outboxed that guy with one hand. Just one hand. Most people are expecting Devin to do the same in the rematch.
I am.
I just don't think George can change all that much about who he is as a fighter after just one fight. I don't. I have Devin winning the second fight on points, Devin winning the rematch.
Potentially moving straight into a Vasyl Lomachenko showdown. That's what I've been waiting for.
Vasyl Lomachenko, who says, I prepare for this moment. I need this chance. I need this fight. Undisputed world champion.
And let's hope that's what we get. Let's hope it comes to that, because this is one of the better fights, the more intriguing fights the lightweight division has to offer.
Very recently, the undisputed lightweight champion Devin Haney himself threw down the gauntlet, calling out Gervonta Davis, saying if he wants the fight, he can have the fight. And if you have time for a Gervonta Davis, you should in theory have time
for Vasyl Lomachenko, because if you were to fight Gervonta Davis, in all likelihood, it would be at 135 pounds. It would be in the lightweight division, because that is where Gervonta Davis is campaigning.
That's where his last fight took place. That's where he is right now until further notice. So if you have time for him at lightweight,
you should have time for Loma, Vasyl Lomachenko, who in all likelihood will become Devin Haney's mandatory challenger by way of the WBO for the brown belt, should Vasyl Lomachenko emerge victorious late next month in October. I really want both of these kids to make it through their fights. I hope Vasyl Lomachenko has a dominant victory. I hope Devin has one as well, because what I want to see is those two in the ring. I want to see them fight. Devin's going to be in action in the land down under, October 16th to an Australian, October 15th to an American, as we are 14 or 15 hours behind them. So the fight's going to be happening on a Saturday night here. I believe it's a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday evening there. They're in Australia. The same day as Wilder versus Helenius. The same day as that pay-per-view. Devin Haney's fight with George, the first fight, was billed as a pay-per-view in Australia, and it was shown here domestically in the United States by way of ESPN and ESPN Plus, and it did bring in very good viewing figures, just over 1 million. Will the second fight do that, going head-to-head with Wilder's ring return, Wilder's pay-per-view? I mean, it is the cheaper alternative, and it is going down on the biggest sports network in the country, so you have to consider that. Domestically, they are sharing an audience, with the difference being that Devin Haney's fight, it doesn't come with a hefty pay-per-view price tag, and Wilder's does. It's entirely possible to watch both fights simultaneously through different forms of media. Perhaps you have one fight on the big screen and the other on your tablet, laptop, or smartphone. There's more than one way. There's definitely more than one way to watch a boxing match these days. I think the biggest hurdle is the price point. For Wilder and the people over there at the PBC, that's an issue they have to deal with. They have to try to sell a fight at a time when piracy and free streaming, illegal streams, is at an all-time high, and that does have a tendency to cut into the buy rate of a pay-per-view, whereas Devin doesn't really have that problem. His fight is going to be shown by way of ESPN and ESPN Plus. It is, in fact, the cheaper alternative as opposed to purchasing a pay-per-view. And I hope he has another dominant showing, just as, if not more dominant than he was in the first fight. Hell, I hope he stops George. I want him to look good, be confident ahead of what could be a Vasyl Lomachenko showdown, and the same applies to Vasyl Lomachenko. I want him to get through his next fight, because I want to see these two boys settle up. Been a lot of speculation that Devin Haney may be leaving the lightweight division soon, but at a time when he's calling out Gervonta Davis, who still campaigns as a lightweight. He campaigns at 135 pounds, the same as Devin, the same as Vasyl Lomachenko. At a time when people are worried that we might not get the Loma fight because Devin might move up, well, look at what Devin's saying. He's saying he's got time for Gervonta Davis, and if you got time for Gervonta, you've got time for Loma. The Lomachenko fight might end up being billed as a pay-per-view, and I'm not against that. If that's what it takes to make the fight happen, I'm all for it. And as the defending, reigning, undisputed champion, Devin will likely get the lion's share of the pot. They've got to do what they've got to do to make this fight, and I view that as a part of it. Devin has made sacrifices to get to this point. In turn, the powers that be must then make sacrifices in order to make this fight, and that's one of them. Don't forget that before COVID-19 shut everything down in 2020, the original plan was to do Lopez versus Lomachenko as a pay-per-view. That's why it's not outside the realm of possibility, at least from where I'm sitting, that should Devin make it through his next fight and Lomachenko make it through his next fight, that might be what they do in order to make this fight a reality. To get these guys the kind of purses they want for such a fight, they might have to bill it as a pay-per-view. And I'm not against it. I think Devin has earned that. I think Vasyl Lomachenko, to some degree, he's earned that as well. A fight between them is a very intriguing fight. Intriguing enough that I don't mind it being a pay-per-view. I don't mind the price point. I don't have any illusions about things either. I'm not expecting this to do 500,000 or even 1 million pay-per-view buys, no. Modest estimate, I'd say maybe it does between 250 to maybe 300,000 pay-per-view buys, with promotion, of course, and that might be enough to satisfy the financial demands of the fighters, coupled with whatever it brings in
at the gate, because it is a genuinely intriguing fight. One of the better fights you can hope to make in the lightweight division. A fight that has organic buzz.
Remember, these ain't the kind of guys you gotta pay them $20-30 million to get them in the ring.
Operational costs might be moderate, which could lead to a successful pay-per-view that doesn't have to do 500,000 or 1 million buys in order to break even. I'm looking forward to Devin Haney versus Machenko, but let's just hope that's what it comes to and we actually get it. Finally, an alarming bit of news in reference to the Chris Eubank Jr. versus Benn showdown set to go down next month. Chris Eubank Sr. has claimed he's now pulled Chris Eubank Jr. out of the Benn fight on October 8th due to concerns about the 157-pound
catchweight. Eubank Sr. said,
"My son's life cannot be put in danger. I've already lost one. It can't happen again." And most are interpreting this as a play to get the Benn and Matchroom people to renegotiate the terms of engagement as to
have the weight restrictions removed, perhaps the catch weight and or the rehydration clause.
But I don't think the people at Matchroom and I don't think Benn should do that. I think they should stick to their guns because comparatively they have more options should this fight fall apart than Chris Eubank Jr. does. They can always explore a Florian Marcoux fight,
a Michael McKinson fight, a Blair Cobbs fight. If Chris Eubank Jr. screws the pooch, nobody's gonna blame Conor.
The same way nobody blamed Gennady Golovkin when his fight with Chris Eubank Jr. fell apart, when he was pulled out of that fight by his father, no less. History is repeating itself, though in truth,
Chris Eubank Jr. is a grown man. How the hell's his daddy pulling him out of a fight? Does he even have the power to do that?
What are we talking about here? Power of attorney. Senior is pulling Junior out of a fight when Junior is a grown man in his early 30s.
That's why most people are interpreting this as a play to renegotiate the terms of engagement. And as stated, I think Benn and Matchroom should stick to their guns.
I don't know that Senior isn't legitimately concerned. Perhaps he is. He did lose one of his sons last year, Seb Eubank, who passed away, unfortunately, due to a massive heart attack in Dubai. But this is a different situation. This situation is not akin to that situation. It's your son who's choosing to fight a naturally smaller fighter. And these weight stipulations are intended to even the playing field.
Maybe you don't think these weight stipulations are fair, but how fair is it that Chris Eubank Jr. wants to take on a welterweight?
More importantly, he's a grown man who already agreed to all of this. You can't turn back now. You can't turn back and save face using this as the reason, this as the excuse, or the guilt trip.
I didn't pack no luggage and I'm not buying it.
How could Chris Eubank Sr. have the power to pull his son out of a fight when his son already agreed to the terms of engagement and he's a grown man?
How does that even work? He has the power to bring this fight to a screeching halt.
The news is still fresh and this is an evolving story. I don't know if it will be made official by the time that this video is uploaded, but the news is spreading fast. It's everywhere.
This fight gets called off because of this.
Benn won't take the heat for it. It'll be the second time that Chris Eubank Jr.'s daddy came in to rescue it.
But if he walks away from this, he has very few options left on the table.
So Conor should just stick to his guns.